Ryan stepped closer, his movements careful, deliberate, as if approaching a fragile glass. "You did nothing wrong," he said firmly. "It was me. I was a coward." The honesty in his voice shook her, but the wound was too deep to heal in a single confession. Her silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. Finally, she turned away, her fingers trembling as she picked up the forgotten mug from the table. She wrapped her hands around it, though it was cold, as though it might anchor her. "You can't just come back and expect me to open my heart like nothing happened," she said, her voice cracking. Ryan's expression softened, almost pained. "I don't expect that. I just need you to know I'm here, that I never stopped." His voice faltered. "I never stopped loving you." The words hit her like a wave, knocking the air from her lungs. She squeezed the mug tighter, afraid it might slip from her hands. Her heart, traitorous and wild, thudded painfully against her ribs. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to run into his arms and push him away all at once. Instead, she whispered, "You don't get to say that to me." Ryan's hand lifted, hovering in the air between them, stopping just short of touching hers. His eyes searched her face, silently begging for permission to close the distance. But Emma's pride, her fear, held her still. The storm outside raged on. Lightning flashing through the curtains, shadows dancing across Ryan's face. In the flicker of light, Emma saw something she hadn't wanted to admit. The part of her that still loved him wasn't gone. It had only been sleeping, waiting for a night like this to wake again. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. She couldn't bring herself to forgive him, not yet. But she also couldn't send him back into the storm. And that was her mistake. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't forgetting to close a door at midnight. It was forgetting to close the doors of the heart. The clock struck 1. The clock ticked past 1 in the morning, its steady rhythm louder than the storm outside. Emma sat at the far end of the sofa, her knees drawn close, while Ryan took the chair across from her. The distance between them felt deliberate, like an invisible wall they both feared to cross. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. Every few seconds, Ryan's gaze flicked toward her, and every time Emma looked away, she couldn't bear the weight of his eyes, the same eyes that once promised forever, the same eyes that had haunted her dreams after he left. Finally, Ryan spoke. His voice was low, rough around the edges. "I know I don't deserve your time, Emma, but I can't keep carrying the truth alone. I need to tell you why I left." Emma's chest tightened. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, demanding answers, hearing his excuses, finally getting closure. Yet now, sitting here, she wasn't sure she wanted the truth. What if it only reopened wounds she had worked so hard to heal? Still, she whispered, "Then tell me." Ryan leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped as though he were holding onto something fragile. He looked at the floor for a long moment before raising his eyes to hers. "I left because I was scared," he said finally. "Scared of not being enough for you." Emma blinked. The words hung in the air, strange and unexpected. Not enough. She repeated, disbelief lacing her tone. "Ryan, you were everything to me. You had my love, my trust, my future. How could you think you weren't enough?" His jaw tightened. "Because I saw the life you deserved, the kind of life I wasn't. Sure, I could give. You had dreams, Emma. You wanted stability, family, a future filled with light. And I was drowning in my own doubts. I thought walking away would save you from disappointment." Her heart clenched. Anger and sorrow collided inside her chest. "You thought abandoning me would protect me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Do you know what it did instead? It broke me, Ryan. It left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love." His eyes closed for a moment, as if her words struck exactly where he knew they would. "I know," he admitted. "And I hate myself for it. Not a day went by that I didn't regret what I did." Emma shook her head, rising from the sofa. Walls of the living room seemed too close, the air too heavy. She paced slowly, her arms folded across her chest. Regret doesn't erase the years, Ryan. Regret doesn't hold you at night when the silence feels unbearable. Her voice cracked, and she hated that he could still hear the hurt beneath her anger. Ryan stood, too, but kept his distance. His hands were balled into fists at his sides, not in anger, but in desperation. "I know words aren't enough," he said, his voice shaking. "But Emma, I came back because I can't live without you anymore. I've tried. God knows I've tried. But nothing fills the space you left." The confession pierced her, but she fought against the part of her heart that wanted to believe him. She had rebuilt herself from pieces once before. Could she risk shattering again? Her eyes burned as she turned toward him. "Do you know what it felt like to wake up one morning and realize the man I loved was gone? Without warning, without a goodbye." Ryan's face crumpled. "It felt like hell," he said softly, "'cause I lived that too. Leaving you was the worst mistake of my life, Emma." The storm outside gave a sudden roar, lightning flashing bright against the windows. For a brief second, the room was flooded with light, casting Ryan in stark shadows. He looked older now, wearier, but the way he looked at her, like she was still the only thing that mattered, was the same. Emma's heart betrayed her in that moment. Beneath all the anger, all the pain, the love she thought she had buried was still there, flickering like embers in the dark. Her breath came fast. She pressed her hands against the edge of the table to steady herself. "You can't just walk in here and ask me to forget," she whispered. "I'm not asking you to forget," Ryan said firmly. He stepped closer, slowly, as though afraid she might retreat. His voice softened. "I'm asking you to let me try again, to prove I won't run this time." Emma shook her head, torn between the pull of his words and the weight of her scars. "And what if you do? What if you break me again?" Ryan stopped just a foot away, his hand lifting slightly, hovering near hers, but not daring to touch. His eyes were filled with something raw, something pleading. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life fixing it. But Emma, please, don't shut me out without giving me a chance." Her throat tightened, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to step back, to build the wall higher, to protect herself. But instead, she found herself frozen, her body trembling with the war raging inside her heart. The clock ticked louder, each second stretching endlessly. The air was thick with unspoken feelings, the kind that could heal or destroy. Emma's lips parted, but no words came. All she could do was stand there, staring at the man who had once been her everything, wondering if he could ever be that again. Lightning flashed once more, and in that fleeting light, she saw the truth she had tried so hard to ignore. She still loved him, but love, she knew, was never enough on its own. The storm quieted outside, but inside Emma, the storm only grew stronger, and as the clock struck 1:30, she realized the hardest choice still lay ahead. Emma Mitchell had always been the kind of woman who paid attention to the little things. She double-checked the locks every night, unplugged the kettle, and folded the throw blankets on her sofa as though someone might judge her if they saw them. Crooked, her friends teased her for being too careful, too precise, but Emma knew better. When you lived alone, carefulness became a habit, a shield against the unexpected. That night, though, something was different. The rain had started early, in the evening, tapping against her windows like impatient fingers. By the time the clock neared midnight, the steady rhythm had turned into a storm. Thunder rolled in the distance, low and heavy, and the wind howled down the empty street outside her little house in Cambridge, just across the river from Boston. Emma had spent the evening curled up on her sofa, a half-finished book resting on her lap. She hadn't read much of it, though. Her mind had been elsewhere, caught between the memories she tried to bury and the loneliness she could never quite shake. At 32, she had a good job as a graphic designer, a cozy home, and a small circle of friends. Sometimes, especially. On nights like this, she wondered if she had traded passion for safety, dreams for comfort. When midnight came, she stirred. She switched off the lamp, stretched, and gathered her blanket. Normally, she would have walked straight to the door too. Checked the locks. It was her ritual. But that night, distracted by the sound of thunder and the ache of memories, she forgot. The door remained slightly ajar, just enough for the wind to push its way in. It wasn't until she heard the faint creak of the hinge, the whisper of air moving through her hallway, that she realized something was wrong. Her heart gave a sharp jolt. She set the blanket aside and stood still, straining her ears. At first she thought it was just the storm. But the sound came again, deliberate, unmistakable. The door. Emma's pulse quickened. She hesitated, her mind flashing with a dozen possibilities. Maybe she had simply forgotten to lock it. Maybe the wind had blown it open. But another thought, the darker one, slid in before she could stop it. What if someone had come in? She grabbed her phone from the coffee table, holding it like a shield, though she knew it wouldn't protect her. Slowly, cautiously, she walked toward the sound. Each step felt heavier than the last, her bare feet silent against the wooden floor. And then she saw him. Standing in the doorway, dripping with rain, was a figure from her past. His shoulders broad beneath his soaked jacket, his hair plastered against his forehead, his presence filling the small space between the night and her home. It was Ryan Carter. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, her body refused to move. She had not seen him in nearly 7 years, not since the night he walked away without an explanation, leaving her with nothing but silence and questions that burned holes in her heart. And yet, here he was, standing in her doorway as though no time had passed. "Emma," he said softly. His voice carried the weight of the storm outside, low and steady, but with an edge of hesitation, as if he, too, could not believe this moment was real. Her throat tightened. "Ryan," the word was little more than a whisper, a fragile thread of sound that carried across the space between them. He didn't answer right away. Instead, his eyes searched hers, as if he were afraid she might slam the door in his face before he could speak again. And then he said it, the words that made her chest ache with something sharp and unexplainable. "You forgot to close the door." Emma's breath trembled. She realized with a painful twist in her chest that it wasn't just the door she had left open. It was something far deeper, something she had locked away long ago, only to find it wide open now at the sight of him. The storm raged behind him. But inside her living room, another storm began to brew, one she had been avoiding for years. Her fingers tightened around her phone. She wanted to say 1,000 things, demand why he was here, why he had come back, why now, after everything. But her voice failed her, and all she could do was stand there, caught between the past and the present, between the safety she had built and the chaos he had always brought with him. The clock struck 12:05, its chime echoing softly through the silence. Emma swallowed hard, knowing this night would not end like any other. She had forgotten to close the door at midnight. And because of that single mistake, her past had walked back into her life. For a long moment, the sound of rain was the only thing filling the silence between them. Ryan stood just inside the doorway, water dripping onto the hardwood floor. His presence too large, too heavy, too familiar for Emma's chest to hold. She hadn't seen him in nearly 7 years. 7 years of unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and silent anger. 7 years of teaching herself to live without him, to lock her memories away in the deepest corners of her mind. And yet, in an instant, all of that careful work was undone. Emma swallowed hard. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" Her voice shook, though she hated that he could still do that to her. His jaw tightened as though the answer wasn't simple. "I was passing through," he said, too quickly. The lie slid between them like a blade. She knew him too well to believe it. Ryan Carter was many things, but never careless, never coincidental, passing through. She repeated, her tone flat, disbelieving. "After all these years, you just happened to show up at midnight at my door in the middle of a storm." He didn't flinch, but his eyes dropped for the briefest moment, betraying him. "I needed to see you." Her stomach twisted. There, it was the truth, though not the whole of it. And the worst part. A part of her wanted to hear more. A part of her, the one she had buried, still cared. Emma crossed her arms, wrapping them tight around herself. "You don't get to need things from me anymore, Ryan. You made that choice a long time ago." The words left her lips sharper than she intended, but they were true. She still remembered the night he left. No explanations, no goodbye. Just silence where there had once been laughter, warmth, and promises. Ryan exhaled slowly, his breath visible in the cool draft that slipped through the open door. "You're right," he admitted quietly. "I don't deserve to be here. But Emma," I couldn't stay away anymore. Something inside her ached at the way he said her name, soft, like a prayer. She hated that it still sounded beautiful on his lips. Thought she should have sent him away. She should have closed the door, locked it, and gone back to the life she had rebuilt. But instead, she stepped aside. A tiny movement, but it was enough. Ryan walked in, and the storm followed. The warmth of the house clashed with the cold dripping from his clothes. He slipped off his jacket, leaving it by the door. His eyes traveled over the room, the same walls they had once painted together, the same bookshelf where they had stacked their favorite novels. The past hung between them like an old photograph, edges frayed but impossible to throw away. Emma stayed by the doorway, keeping distance between them. "Why now?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Ryan turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." "I haven't. Not once." Her chest tightened. She gripped the edge of the table to keep herself steady. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say that. You don't get to say that too. Me after disappearing." His gaze softened, but he didn't look away. "Emma, I made mistakes. I thought walking away was the right thing, that I was protecting you from a life I couldn't give. But every day since, I've thought about what I lost, what we lost." Tears threatened behind her eyes, but she forced them back. She had waited years for answers, and now, hearing them, she wasn't sure she wanted them anymore. "If you think those words can undo the years you stole from me?" "The nights I cried alone, wondering what I did wrong.